3D Printing Today, show number 428. Hybrid kits. More on gaming. Getting the first layer right.
Welcome back to 3D Printing Today, the podcast about all aspects of 3D printing. Hobby, professional, industrial, it doesn't matter what kind of 3D printing, we cover it all. My name's Andy Cohen, and I'm here at Mr. Whitney Potter.
How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing pretty good, so it looks like Rise 3D is not doing pretty good. Rise 3D is calling it quits. They're closing their doors, and they've set up a support company called Palitra, if I don't know how to pronounce that. It looks like it's a made-up name. But let's talk
the
a little bit.
The URL was available. So.
I guess. So let's talk about Rise 3D a little bit. Rise 3D was a company that was put together by a fellow who was involved at Z Corp. And it looks, we've never seen one of these machines, but they say that it was a kind of a hybrid system that was both the powder disposition and like FDM type of disposition or molten plastic. I'm not sure how that may have worked. Maybe it was they would use the powder as support and the plastic, like the FDM, would work the way we usually use it in our hobby machines. They don't really describe it that well.
Yeah, the article, and I'm not really sure the person who wrote the article understood it exactly, because in one place they describe it as binder jetting, in another place they describe it as material jetting, combined with FFF, which to me those would be very different processes.
Yeah, if there's somebody out there listening to the podcast that understands the technology, and you're interested in correcting us, send us an email and we can correct this.
It sounds interesting. Apparently, it's a full color printing technology, but it's not too surprising that you've got this very expensive industrial machine that has perhaps a very limited application use case, and it's not too surprising that the company is going under, because it's just...
And they're in direct competition with Stratasys, with their jet technology, and with HP, with its jet technology,
right,
which is selling like crazy. All sorts of service bureaus are buying them up. Large companies are buying them. They're providing their own support to them. That could be the reason why Rise closed their doors, but it doesn't really tell us in this article, so we really don't know why they closed their doors. But it's easy to infer based on all the other technologies that are out there, which are pretty impressive. I mean, the system we saw years ago from Stratasys, where you can easily get a full Pantone color matching and a range of rigidity and flexibility in your print. It's kind of hard to beat that with extreme high resolution quality down to, I think, like 5 microns is ridiculously fine quality.
Unless you can beat them on speed or price.
Yeah.
And I doubt that they were doing that in either of them.
Yeah.
So it's too bad. There's a lot of good ideas out there, but the market doesn't have space for all of them.
I'm afraid not.
So.
Oh, well, sorry, Rise 3D. Maybe they can come up with a lower cost version of it. There you go. At the hobby level, and then I bet it would sell then.
If you had a full color printer in the sub $10,000 range, it would sell like hotcakes.
Yeah.
But I don't know that anybody's able to do that right now.
Not when it's 120,000. It's not going to work.
Right. I think if that technology was feasible, I think we would have it in the marketplace already. And there's probably people working on it, but the ones we've seen so far have not been so good.
No. In the meantime, what's coming up on our show this week?
Let's see. We start out talking about hybrid kits.
We talk more on the gaming market.
And then we're working on getting the first layer right.
Let's do it.
So we were just talking about how there's like a problem with all of the, manufactured 3D printers you've got. So why don't you just build your own? Why don't you just build
or design my own?
Design your own, yeah. Design the optimal 3D printer.
Well, I could. I've got the background for it, which is why I got into 3D printing in the first place. A long time ago, my first experience with 3D printing was back with the very first SLA machines before they got high resolution. They were kind of clunky output. It was a bath of resin,
right.
and the laser light kind of would come to a point from two different places within the bath of resin, and then the resin would all come out. It would take months for us to get the part back from the people that would print it. It was kind of weird. And we used the early Gibson printers in a different company for prototypes and test things. I could, but I don't think I need to, because if I was going to design a printer, I wouldn't. I would simply go from the Hevort.
Okay.
Because from my opinion, there's things about the Hevort that is optimal. That's the design that I would start with. And I know we've debated the way over-engineered bed.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
And to a great degree, I agree. You're right.
I mean, not just over-engineered, over-complicated.
Yeah, you're right. It is. It is overcomplicated. The way the bed is mounted, if you want to go this way with their kit,
right.
You don't have to go this way. But if this is what you want in your kit, you can make the beds truly self-leveling to X and Y axis by you put in three lead, not lead screws. In this case, they're ball screws,
right?
And which are very expensive,
right? And you got linear guides as well,
and then you have linear guides on the bed underneath, attached to a hinge on the hub that's on the ball screw. So as this thing is moving in its corner, it slides on this linear. It's really kind of over-engineered. It's over-engineered.
Way over-engineered. Yeah. My understanding of it is designed for some sort of future where we will be doing, multi-axis prints by setting the bed to arbitrary angles.
And I don't think
that's the only excuse I can see for that amount of engineering.
And even for that use case, I don't think it would satisfy it, because I don't think you're going to get enough of an angle.
Right.
To be able to do that. So it's kind of a lot there for a result that could be accomplished with much less.
Right.
So if we take a look at the Rat Rig, the Rat Rig accomplishes the same thing with a way simpler design. But here's what I would do. If I was going to build a Hevort, I would just simply copy the design off the Rat Rig and put it into the Hevort.
So the Z-axis.
Yeah, for the Z-axis.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, why wouldn't I just build a Rat Rig? Well, there's two reasons. Reason number one is the Rat Rig comes out of Australia, and the exchange rate between here and Australia is, it's a little bit too high for my taste.
Okay.
Whereas if I just simply source the parts for the Hevort, I'd get as good, if not better, quality.
Right.
And the other reason is I believe the enclosure for the Hevort is way superior to any of the others that are out there. It has a kind of a dual box design.
Okay.
Well, actually, it's more than a dual box. It's more like a quad box design. You have one rectangular area on the bottom, another rectangular area on the side, and then you have the build area, which is a rectangular area. All of this is with extrusions, aluminum extrusions. Right. So you've got a lot of rigidity and a lot of space. On the other hand, it's going to take up a lot of space, and it's going to be pretty heavy.
Yeah,
it's not going to be that easy to manage.
Your footprint is going to be much, much larger than your build area.
Yeah, way, way larger. But that also gives you the opportunity to do tool changing, because you'll have plenty of space within your area for the parking of the tools and the movement of the tools and the priming and the wiping. So I would probably, if I was going to design my own, I wouldn't start from scratch. I would do what the Hevort guys did, which I think is excellent. And I may make it a hybrid of design. That's probably what I would do. So a little while ago, we did a segment on gaming as a 3D printing market.
Yeah, there seemed to be a huge number of those little tabletop miniatures. There's an incredible amount of artistry and creativity going into those. Yeah,
and look
really
at
neat.
The tribes on My Mini Factory.
Mm-hmm.
The artwork involved is stunning, absolutely stunning. And if you've got an SLA machine, which I hope you're using in your garage, with the window open,
or in your backyard,
outside. If you've got one of those and you're printing these little figures at little tiny figures, you're printing these beautiful little statues.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Incredible amount of detail.
Pretty cool. Yep. But when we ended that segment, I ended it with the question. Well, what I don't understand is, so when you buy a version of, say, Warhammer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these are the type of games where you've got these little figures.
Right.
Warhammer is a copyrighted game.
Sure.
And
that doesn't surprise me.
And that copyright's protected at all levels of the gaming industry.
Okay.
And when you play Warhammer, they sell it with injected molded little parts that you glue together and paint, which is cool. That's kind of fun. Kind of a fun thing if you're a kid.
Yeah.
Sounds like great. And you paint them, and then you get together with your friends, and you get this book called the Codex.
Okay.
And in the Codex...
This is the rule book, basically.
This is the rule book, yeah. And it's a book. It's not a little pamphlet. It's crazy. And so in the Codex defines the moves and capabilities and strengths and weaknesses of each of these little figures. Mm-hmm. Well, when we were looking at the My Mini Factory stuff, and I was like, well, what do you do about a codex? How do you associate?
Right, you make your own. Yeah.
And that's the answer. You have to make your own. Mm-hmm. And the other answer is, and you can't really use them in official play. So if you're going to take your box of painted figures that you printed off of My Mini Factory down to your local gaming shop and expect to get into a game with somebody else, even if they also printed it and you have an agreed upon codex, the guy that owns that store may say to you, no, you can't do that here. Take it home.
That's so weird.
And that's kind of sad because that kind of puts the nix on this as a marketplace for 3D printing material, and 3D printing content, 3D printable content. What would be cool, and I'd hope somebody would do this someday, for this market's sake, is to create trademarked books that you could purchase that are legitimate gaming books that are somehow tied to these files that you purchase that are printable.
Well, good. I don't really know that much about this segment. I think you've researched a lot more than me, but just judging by the stuff that we're seeing available, I think it's got to go way beyond Warhammer, because there's all kinds of different environments. I mean, there's post-apocalyptic environments. Yeah. There's your standard dungeon crawler things. But there's all kinds of different characters and settings and science fiction environments. I mean, and anything you can imagine, you can get a tiny little miniature version of it. And I mean, somebody is playing with these, or at least making them.
Yeah.
So
somebody's using them. Somebody's buying them. But it's unfortunate though that you really can't associate them with the gaming communities at the gaming stores.
Yeah.
You probably won't be able to.
Well, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you're going down to you're going to a park to play chess, right? There's parks in New York where everybody goes to play chess, right? And you show up and you're like, okay, well, I've got my super queen. My super queen can move to any square on the board instantaneously. It can just hop and jump and kill anybody. That's not going to make the game very good for the other guy. So,
I agree.
There is, there are some limitations to this. And I never played Warhammer. That wasn't a thing when I was a kid. I played Dungeons and Dragons. And that was, it was interesting because you had, one person who was the dungeon master who was essentially God.
Yeah.
They were omnipotent.
Yeah.
They could do anything. And as dungeon master, you learned very quickly, your job was not to win. Your job was you won by making sure your players had a great time. Right.
But getting back to the issue though, so another example is Magic the Gathering. Well, God, the Dungeon Master for Magic the Gathering and Warhammer also are those people that own those trademarks and have license to sell those trademarked things.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So with Magic the Gathering, kind of what you said about with the Queen,
Right.
with Magic the Gathering, you can go buy yourself a $500 card that literally obliterates everybody else's cards, and you win no matter what.
Yeah, but nobody will want to play with you again.
Exactly.
So, I mean, as soon as that comes out, people are like, okay, well, see ya.
Yeah, we're not going to play.
We're not going to play anymore.
Yeah, right.
So.
And yeah, so from that perspective, if you build your own army and that army's not pragmatic to other armies for that game, it won't work. It won't work at all.
But most of these people kind of, well, I don't, maybe these people don't understand that, but it's like, yeah, I mean, the point is for everybody to have fun, and if somebody's not having fun, they're not coming back.
Yeah. Well, as long as they're all having fun.
Yep.
This segment's per request from a fellow on our Facebook group named Paul. He asks us to discuss getting that first layer right.
Ah, yes.
Well, let's first talk about why you need to get it right.
Well,
if you don't get that first layer right, it causes a situation which means it's likely your part will either not successfully complete or not be the way you want it to be.
Right.
The first issue is an item can easily pop off the plate.
or curl up in the corners.
And the second is it curls up in the corners and you don't get your flat surface that you may require. Another reason for making sure you get the first layer right is you could easily clog your extruder, and that's when it's too close. So if it's too close, your smear onto the surface of your plate will be there won't be enough room for the liquid plastic to get out, and it'll shove back in, and you will get clogs.
Yeah,
and you'll hear stepper stutter right away.
Yeah, it's like holding your thumb over the hose.
Yeah, but in this case, the water will solidify.
will burst the hose.
Yeah, that hose will not function very well afterward. Yep. And so if you don't pay attention to that while you're doing that first layer, all of a sudden the rest of your layers don't look very good because you're partially clogged. On the other hand, if you don't get the right distance on the other extreme and the stuff doesn't squish down enough, think of it, if you cut it straight down with a razor blade, you'll get a circular pattern of that stuff. So you want it to not be a circle against your plate. Yeah. With one part of that circle, that little tiny bit of the circle touching your plate, because that means there's not enough surface area to keep it from coming off.
Right.
So you've got to get that circle squished into a nice oval.
The right amount of smoosh is required.
Yeah. So how do you do that? How do you get that? Well,
set your smoosh coefficient.
Yes, your smoosh coefficient is very important. Moosh or smoosh. That's easy to say. Yeah, yes. Moosh or smoosh. Anyway, how do you get that? Well, if you're a newbie, and the bane for all newbies is bed leveling.
Yes.
Ooh, bed leveling. Ooh. And everybody thinks don't do bed leveling. Get yourself a what is it called? Mesh compensation probe.
Right.
Like a BL Touch or something like that. And just let it do it automatically. That's new school. Old school
which is great.
When you manually do it.
Which is great when it works.
When it works.
When it doesn't work, it's a hell of a lot harder to fix than just leveling the damn bed.
And why is it a hell of a lot harder to fix? For two very important reasons. One, you've never done it before. And when you do have to do it, you only have to do it once every couple of months, which means you forgot how to do it. And two, to fix it, you're going to need to go into G-code and set that offset setting, and getting that optimal ain't easy. It's kind of tricky to do.
It's just a whole lot easier to just level the damn
In the end, you're better off just print a skirt on your object, and while it's printing the skirt, you watch it to see if it's either too squished or not squished enough. You run your finger over it.
Yep.
If it comes off, guess what?
It's not squished enough.
You've got to move the bed slightly up. So to level the bed, what you're doing is you're making sure that the distance between your hot end and your bed, your plate, is the same everywhere. Yeah. That's different from making sure it's the optimal distance.
The height offset, yeah.
So you may have it nice and level, but you may be too far away.
Right.
So if things are coming off the bed, you're leveling it too far away.
Yep.
In which case, if you're using a piece of paper and you're moving the extruder head into each position and rotating the little control knobs, make it so that it bites the paper a bit more.
Yep.
And also make sure you go to the corners and go to the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's so far off that the middle is so different from the corners, get rid of the plate that you're using. And if you're using one of those flexible plates, without mesh compensation, those flexible plates become problematic because they're going to take the shape of the heater underneath, and that heater underneath is not going to be perfectly flat.
And make sure you're doing this with your bed heated at the temperature you're going to be doing it.
That's
because
true.
Everything
That's exactly
moves when you heat it up.
That's right. Thank you. And your hot end, too.
Yes.
Which means you burn your fingertips if you're not careful.
Yes.
Got to be careful doing this.
Yep.
So it's a little tricky to do. If your printer does it automatically, and you've never had to do it, good for you. That's great. And I hope it never goes out of whack on you.
Right.
And it will go out of whack on you someday.
Right.
So it's in your best interest to understand how to adjust it and understand that mush. Get the feel of that mush.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. Once you've got it, you're going to do it every time.
Yep.
Which means it becomes second nature and it becomes really easy.
And you very seldomly have to at least if your printer is engineered well, you very seldomly have to re-level the bed once you've done it.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the tool changer for just a moment. The tool changer's bed is permanently fixed. There's no tuning knobs. And the carriage that the tool's attached to has an Omron pressure switch underneath it. So when I do
is it a proximity switch or is it
it's a physical push
so
button.
It's a click
push button. And when I do my Z homing, the carriage goes dead center and the bed comes up and hits that switch. And that's how I get 0 for my Z axis. Okay. So I can't tune that on the fly. I can't. I have to get my offsets for each extruder set correctly in G-code, okay, in the config file of RepRap firmware. So guess how I adjust when things are not optimal? I put a little bit more Aquanet on.
There you go. Okay.
And Aquanet, when it's dried, you're adding maybe
couple thou.
Really, really thin layers.
Yep.
So I put a little bit more there, and I get the grip, and I get that first layer. And you get that first layer, just keep going, and you'll be fine.
Yep. Another thing you can do to help get the first layer is, depending on what slicer you're using, I think most of the better slicers do this now. On your first layer, you can have a heavier extrusion, which sort of gives you more range of error. If you have it too heavy, you get what they call the elephant's foot, which is this sort of little like rim kind of that comes out around the bottom of your parts.
I hate it when my parts do that.
I hate that too, but it's really easy to get rid of, and if that makes sure your part is stuck well to the bed, I'm okay with that, because after you get it off the bed, assuming you can get it off the bed, it's not stuck too well. You can take a sharp knife or a razor blade or something and just drag it sort of sideways across that and just scrape those little flanges off if it's a relatively simple part. And that works fine. You can slow down for your first layer, and you can have a heavier extrusion for your first layer. And those will both help.
Now, I mentioned Aquanet. If you're not in the United States or the continental North America area, you can't get it. Lorna-Mar, or whatever that company is, they will not let you sell it anywhere else. You can't ship an aerosol container.
It would be very expensive too.
And if you can get it, there's certain types of glue stick. Usually it's colored purple. And a lot of companies will, when they sell their printers, they sell them with glue sticks, and you can figure out where to get those. And those you can buy overseas and have them shipped to you.
Yeah, Yoo-Hoo glue sticks or whatever.
Yeah, Yoo-Hoo or the Borden
Yeah.
Borden makes them.
Elmer's
from Borden.
The glue sticks work pretty well too. It's a stronger that they sort of on the stick versus release spectrum. They're more on the stick side.
Generic hairspray will not work. What you need is a liquid vinyl or some material that reacts differently under different temperatures.
Yep.
And most hairspray out there is gooey, and that's not what you want. If you're not in the United States and you're using some kind of chemical bond, send us an email. Let us know what you're using, and we'll share it with the rest of the listeners here, because I am curious. I do like to see what folks out there are using. One of the most popular forms of chemical bond is PEI. And PEI, it comes in sheets. You can also powder coat PEI on material, such as a sheet of steel, which is what the folks at Prusa Research do with their beds, and their beds are some of the best plates you can get, which require, by the way, mesh compensation because they're flexible.
Yeah. And the thing with PEI is it's a consumable, it's going to wear out, and you can't just add a little bit to, the section of it that's worn out like you can using hairspray or Aquanet or a glue stick kind of thing.
But buying yourself a plate of PEI is not inexpensive.
Right.
It's pretty pricey.
And if you're not careful, you end up wearing it in the section, the origin right in the middle of the bed or wherever you end up.
You'll never be able to level
parts.
it. You'll never be able to level it. That's so it goes.
Yep.
Oh boy, Whitney, another show written to the hard drive, waiting for encoding, uploading, and commitment on our feed. To all of our very supportive listeners, thank you all out there for your support on Patreon. Thank you for your positive written reviews. We do appreciate those a lot. And thanks for listening. We do it for you. We do it for fun. We don't do this for money or for eyeballs. What else would you do it for?
I don't know.
Free filament?
Free filament?
Yeah.
That's actually some of the free filament we get. It's
pretty bad.
Kind of weird.
Remember that algae filament?
Yeah, I was thinking of the algae
Boy, that
filament.
Was bad.
Well, it
printed okay.
It printed okay. It was a really interesting look. It had this totally unique thing, but my whole garage smelled like a tide pool at low tide with something rotting in it. It was quite extraordinary.
Okay, now that our listeners have that wonderful picture in their head.
Yep.
Okay, thing of the week. Let's do the thing of the week first, and then we have a shout out. So let's see. The thing of the week this week, what was it? I forget.
The zip toggle.
The zip toggle. Oh, there it is. The Zip Toggle by Byte Slinger on Thingiverse.
And Byte Slinger is otherwise known as Josh Forwood from Bristol, UK.
This is the second version of what was a very popular object on Thingiverse a couple of years, it was 5 years ago now. And this is a way upgraded version of it. It's basically when you break off that little tab on your zippers, this is a replacement. Now, what I like about this particular design is that it locks the tab in place and it's just the right size. However, what I would warn folks about is that this would not be good for PLA or ABS or a more rigid material. I wouldn't do this in anything except TPU or nylon. Or in other words, that tab's going to break right off. Yeah.
Do you think PETG?
PETG will work.
I think PETG would.
A couple of times, and it'll eventually break.
Yeah, the thing about TPU and nylon is they're so flexible that I don't know if they would actually click together, and if the two parts would lock together with. Well,
based on this design, I think they would. If you look at it's a 3-part design, and there's a locking tab, and based on that locking tab, because you wouldn't depend upon the pressure of the spreading of the tabs. So that locking tab would stay in there. Based on that, I would say, this would be great for a slightly flexible, very, very durable material, such as TPU or nylon probably work best.
Yeah, I think TPU is going to be too flexible when it's that small.
Depends upon the TPU.
That's true.
You can get TPU that's not that flexible, but remember, the real thing is usually like a chain-like thing.
Yeah.
And if it's flexible, then it'll bend a little bit, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's good to bend.
Yeah, okay.
If you're TPU, it's good to bend. Let's see. So that would be thing number 5324552 from Byteslinger. A great object. I'll probably be printing a couple of these for myself. So let's see. Did we mention the email? If you've got a tip, a question, or a candidate thing of the week, send us an email.
Send it to info@3dprintingtoday.com. That's THREE, the letter D, printingtoday.com.
And again, we invite you to join our Google group. Go to Google and search 3D printing tips and tricks. If you want to post, hit the join button and give them an email. It doesn't have to be your personal email. In fact, I recommend you not use your personal email. Go to Gmail or Yahoo and make up an email just for that purpose so that you got to get to it. I suggest never using your personal email except for personal things like family and friends.
Yeah, you should have a special email for family, a special email for friends in case you got to cut somebody out. You know?
Well, it could work for family too.
Exactly.
It depends. Let's see. Next week we do have a show. Show number 429.
Let's see.
It's just a 2-segment show. We start by discussing updating the RepRap firmware.
And then, hold on, it's buried on my desktop here. I lost it. You better tell me.
Okay, and the second segment is about the Orbiter that we installed on the Tool Changer, the Orbiter 1.5 on the Tool Changer. There is an Orbiter version 2, but this was 1.5. Right. Okay, I think that's it.
We were going to do a shout-out.
A shout-out. Oh, that's right. We did get a reply from one of our listeners regarding gaming.
This is from Garrett Newstratton.
And we did ask during our discussion on gaming how you deal with parts that are not like regulation, like Warhammer parts. And I did get the answer. I went to the game store, but this listener provided the answer anyway, so we wanted to give him a shout out. Basically, you use the parts like proxies. You assign each part to a part that's in the documentation for the game. So it's kind of like replacing the parts that are already got specifications.
Just with something that looks much cooler.
And you can play the games, but what you can't do is you can't use these parts in regulation games at tournaments and things. You have to use the actual parts that came with the game and the codex.
Because how are they going to make money on you making your own parts?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I mean.
But the way things are going, if you're a real gamer and you're really into this stuff, it makes a lot of sense to go get yourself, first make yourself a maker space in a safe spot in your garage with an open window. Don't do this in your home, please. Get yourself an inexpensive LCD SLA machine and make your own parts because you can...
Oh, the detail is incredible. Yeah. And some of the models, just the amount of creative effort that's going into this, it's unbelievable. You could go through Thingiverse and just download hundreds of beautifully made little models to print if you were into that.
Right, and from what we hear from our listeners and from the people I've been meeting at the gaming store, a substantial aspect of this form of gaming is, hey, look at the part I painted. Look at this part, and the admiration of the artwork of the part, the sculpting of the part, and the paint job for the part is a substantial aspect of the gaming experience. Now, if you're getting parts that nobody has seen yet and you're painting them and they're coming out really nice, then that's way enhanced substantially. So if you're really into this form of gaming, that's the way to go, I think.
There you go.
Okay, I think that's it.
Great. Thanks for listening.